Today's shiur begins in the middle of Daf Kuf Yud Zayin. You'll notice a Mishnah, 21 lines from the top. Before we begin the actual Gemara, we glance at the side under our No Say topic heading, where we've written Chamish Nashim, 5 women, she'enon ne'emonois, that are not believed, lahoid oleo demei spaila, to testify about a particular woman's husband having died. So now we turn to the Mishnah. Hakol ne'emonim lo'ida. Everyone is believed to testify, to serve as a witness that so-and-so's husband is dead, chutz mechamosa, with the exception of one's mother-in-law, her mother-in-law, ubas chamosa, her mother-in-law's daughter, maybe we can term that her sister-in-law, but specifically it's a sister-in-law as a result of being the daughter of her mother-in-law. V'tsarasa, a co-wife. V'yevimta, this is the wife of one's husband's brother. Ubas baila, if a woman married a man that has a daughter from a previous marriage, that daughter is called the daughter of one's husband. Ma bein get lamisa. What is different about these 5 women that here they are not believed, whereas in the case of the conveyance of a get, a divorce document, let us say a get was sent from outside the land of Israel into Israel. The Mishnah in Maseches Gittin teaches us that the shaliach, the one who's conveying the get, has to say the following: B'fonai nechtav u'b'fonai nechtam. The get was written in front of me and was signed in front of me, basically an acknowledgement that the get was done with proper intention. When it comes to who can serve as a conveyor of the get, each one of these women would be acceptable. So the question the Mishnah is raising is, why is it that with regard to the conveyance of a get, which means that the woman is in question is no longer together with her husband, these women mentioned in the Mishnah can serve as the agents of bringing the get, whereas when it comes to these very women testifying about the woman's husband having been dead, we don't accept them. The Gemara answers, Shaksav mochiach. In the case of the get, in addition to going on their word, we also have a document that substantiates, that convinces us of the woman's divorce, of her being now an unmarried woman. Whereas, regarding the topic of our Mishnah, we're relying solely on the word of these women. And as we'll discover in the Gemara, why these women are not believed will become apparent. Before we get into the reason for why they are not believed, the Gemara raises a question concerning another kind of woman. Another woman, can we believe her? On the side, we have a topic heading which reads, Ha'im yesh lahashvois bas chomio lebas chamoiso. Shall we compare the daughter of one's father-in-law to the halacha regarding the daughter of one's mother-in-law? So we just saw that the daughter of one's mother-in-law is not acceptable to bear witness about her sister-in-law's husband's death. What about the daughter of her father-in-law? So this father-in-law happened to have a daughter from a woman other than her mother-in-law. We have a little diagram on the side. You can see there is a man in the middle called Av. And the Av had been married to 2 women. One of the Av with the aim in that picture, in that diagram, produced a man who is our subject's husband. Notice that Av, that father, has a daughter from another woman. We call her Isha Acheres. So this is a daughter of father-in-law, which is not the daughter of the mother-in-law. So is this bas, can she testify about the death of the husband? That the individual in this picture we call Baila. Basically, it's her brother from a common father. So now the Gemara. The Gemara raises the question. You notice it's a long question. Ibaya laho, bas chomio mahu. What is the din regarding the daughter of one's father-in-law and her reliability regarding testimony of husband's death or lack thereof, lack of reliability? Taima de bas chamosa is the reason that the bas chamosa is not believed. Mishum deika imo de sanyo law, hinami sanyo law. In the case of the daughter of mother-in-law, there is her mother, namely the woman's mother-in-law. Her mother, the bas chamosa's mother, which is the mother-in-law, she has a certain type of antipathy, literally hatred toward the daughter-in-law. So she might very well lie about the death of the husband in order to mess up her daughter-in-law because of this antipathy that we just described. Rashi in the Mishnah explained that the mother-in-law has this antipathy, and we'll see a little bit more about that in the Gemara itself. So as a result of the mother-in-law having this hate toward the daughter-in-law, so naturally, like mother, like daughter, the daughter as well will have that same feeling toward her sister-in-law. But in the case of bas chomia, the daughter of father-in-law, you don't have that mother figure that's feeling hate toward the daughter-in-law. So therefore, since hochaleka imo de sanyola, so the testimony of the father-in-law's daughter would be acceptable. Or dilma, or it could be taima de bas chamosa. The reason that bas chamosa is not acceptable, the omra, when she looks upon her sister-in-law, she says ka'ochla legirsana de ima. She, my brother's wife, is eating, is consuming all of the work, all of the income, the profits that my mother ever made. In other words, a mother's property will go to her son, and this son's sister, namely the sister-in-law, is looking upon the fact that the wife of her brother is going to be enjoying all of her mother's profits. So with that svara in mind, with that analysis in mind, hochanami ka'omra, so to here in the case of father-in-law's daughter, the same logic can apply. Ochla legirsana debei nashoi. This woman that married my brother, this woman is going to be benefiting, consuming all of the profits of my father. Ta shma. So let's try to conclude the question with the following source. Hakol ne'emonim lo yido chutz mechomesh noshim. Our Mishnah said all are believed with the exception of 5 women. The Isa, if it's so that bas chomio, who doesn't appear in the Mishnah, is also unacceptable, shis havyon. So there are actually 6 women that are unacceptable, but the Mishnah doesn't account for 6. It says 5. So it must be that the father-in-law's daughter is acceptable. The Gemara rejects this. Dilma taima de bas chamosa. The Omra, maybe the mention of bas chamosa in the Mishnah is based on the analysis of ka'ochla legirsana de'ima, that this woman who's married to my brother is consuming all of my mother's efforts and income and profits. Well, if that is the svara for bas chamosa, that same svara applies to bas chamia. Lo shna bas chamosa, lo shna bas chamia. There is no distinction between the two. The Mishnah didn't have to spell out bas chamia by name because that particular relative is included in bas chamosa. You'll notice we have a slash mark the Gemara continues with a question that's focused on the Mishnah. The Gemara asks, V'hot Tanya chutz misheva noshim. The Mishnah says that all are believed to testify about a husband's death with the exception of 7 women. And our Mishnah mentioned 5. So how do we resolve these sources? The Gemara answers, Hahi Rebbe Yehuda Hi. The source that says 7 is in accordance with Rebbe Yehuda, another Tanaic authority. Disnan, Rebbe Yehuda Moisif, Rebbe Yehuda adds to the list, Af Eishes Av Ve'ha-Kala. Eishes Av would be the wife of the father. And Kala is a woman, or we call that daughter-in-law, woman married to the man's son. So if you have as far as Rebbe Yehuda is concerned, the woman married to one's husband's father is not acceptable, and the woman married to the husband's son is not acceptable. Omru lo. Now, if it might make things a little clearer, if we just take note of the little diagram we have on the side of the Gemara that we call Eishes Av. You see that there is an Av that's married to an Aim, and they produce a daughter. There is that Av has another wife that we call Isha. She's called Eishes Av. According to Rebbe Yehuda, the Eishes Av, that woman, Isha, cannot testify about the death of her husband's daughter's husband. The death of her husband's son-in-law. We continue in the Gemara. Omru lo, the Chachomim, meaning our Mishnah that said there are only 5, say as follows. Eishes Av, that particular relative called Eishes Av, Harehi Bichlal Bas Habaal. She is included in that which the Mishnah already said, namely Bas Baal. Well, if you look at the same chart that we noted before, we circled Bas in that chart. She is the daughter of the Isha's husband. That's Bas Habal. And the Bas Habal is not believed to testify concerning the Isha. Kala Hare Bichlal Chamoisa. The Chachomim tell Rebbe Yehuda there's no need to add Kala, because the Mishnah mentioned that Chamosa is not believed. A woman's mother-in-law is not believed to say that her son died. So just like the mother-in-law is not believed regarding the daughter-in-law, so too the daughter-in-law is not going to be believed regarding the mother-in-law. So that there's no need to add another individual to the list when one is included in the other. The Gemara now asks a question regarding Rebbe Yehuda. The Rebbe Yehuda, and on the side of the Gemara we've noted that the topic here is Shitas Rebbe Yehuda, the Moisef Oich Shtei Noshim the Eino Ne'emonas, the Meis Baila, 2 additional women that are not believed to say that someone's husband died, Kalo and Eishes Av. So now in focusing on the opinion of Rebbe Yehuda, Bishlama Chamoisa Sanya Lo Lekala, we can understand the ruling in our Mishnah that a mother-in-law has disdain toward the daughter-in-law. The Amra, the mother-in-law, sees that she ka'achla legirsani, that her daughter-in-law is consuming all of her hard work and her profits. In other words, the money or property that is transferred to her son, she sees the son's wife, namely her daughter-in-law, buying all kinds of expensive perfumes and dresses and all kinds of things for her own personal gain, and that creates a sense of fury in the mind of the mother-in-law. Ela kalo my taimo sanyo lechamosa. This is a focus on Shitas Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say that the kalo is not believed regarding the mother-in-law? What vengeance does the kala have toward her mother-in-law? Continuing in the question, Bishlama Bas Habal, we understand that which we see in the Mishnah, that the daughter of one's husband is not believed regarding information concerning the wife of her father, because the sanya li eshes ha'av, the Bas Habal has antipathy toward her father's wife. It's not her mother; it's some other woman. The Omra, it figures ka'achlu l'girsani di'aim. She is consuming all the profits that my mother had brought into the marriage. And if you look back at the chart with Eishes Av, you can see how that very well could be. So the Bas Habal has it in for the Eishes Av. Elo Eishes Ho'av, my taimos sanyo lebas Habal. What is the reason that the Eishes Ha'av cannot testify as Rabbi Yehuda had taught, when by adding her to the list? Elomai Moisif Tarti. What's the point of Rabbi Yehuda adding these two women when it's not apparent why they would lie, why they cannot be relied upon for their testimony regarding the death of the husband? So the Gemara answers, and here we have highlighted with this house marking, as our mivneh indicates, havlotas kala v'yeshesav, the gras hatam Rabbi Yehuda poslon. Why is it that in fact Rabbi Yehuda apostles these two? Elo kala my time osanyo lechamoisa. Why does the daughter-in-law have antipathy toward the mother-in-law? Answer: the maglu livno kol de avda. Her mother-in-law, namely her husband's mother, is going to reveal all the negative characteristics of her daughter-in-law to her son. And this irritates, naturally, the daughter-in-law, knowing that the mother-in-law is saying all kinds of bad things about the daughter-in-law. Eshes Avnami Sanyo Lebas Habal. The wife of one's father, the wife of this woman's father, also has it in for the Bas Habal. The Maglu Lovia called of she, the daughter-in-law, that is her husband's daughter, is going to tell her father about how bad a wife he chose, all the bad things she does. V'Rabbanan, the Rabbanan, who did not include as Kalo and Eishesav in the list, but said that they were subsumed under the titles of Eishes of Bas Habal and Chamoisa. They say as follows: if the women that we listed in the Mishnah are hateful toward the others, so the other will be hateful toward she who is mentioned in the Mishnah, without seeking a new reason. And that's based on a posuk in Mishlei, Kemayim haponim laponim kein leiv ha'odam la'odam. So, as we said, you don't have to add a new reason to justify the non-believability of these two women that Rabbi Yehuda had mentioned. Rabbi Yehuda had mentioned Eishes Av and Kala, when by telling you that Bas Habal is not believed, you can rest assured that just like Bas Habal is not believed regarding Eshesav, the Eshesav will not be believed regarding Bas Habal. And similarly with regard to Chamosa, after telling you that Chamosa is not believed regarding Kala, that automatically will make it such that Kala will not be believed regarding Chamosa, because of the principle in this pasuk that says that just like water reflects the face, the image that is looking into it, if there's a smiling face looking in the water, so the water will project back a smiling face. So too the hearts of man are unto one another. If A shows disdain toward B, B will automatically show disdain towards A. Rabbi Yehuda, who did come up with 2 new reasons to explain the women that he added to the list. What about the pasuk? Hahi b'divrei Torah ksiv. The pasuk is speaking about Torah learning, and the book of Mishlei is generally thought to refer to the realm of Torah learning. The book of Proverbs, all of the Mishalim, the analogies that are there, are analogies regarding Torah learning, and the Rashi explains that the amount of effort that you put into your Torah learning, that is the amount of benefit that you will receive. Rashi speaks about if you put effort into reviewing your Torah learning, so then you will see that you maintain, that you retain a lot of it. The second shot that Rashi gives regarding Torah learning is that if a Rav, a teacher, shows a kindly face, a caring attitude toward his student, so the student will thereby reflect back a success in his Torah learning. So now we continue in the Gemara. Omar Rav Acha bar Avya. And before we go further, we should note on this side we have a topic heading, the nosei Chamoisa habo liachar mikan ha'im ne'emenes lohoid. A chamosa is a mother-in-law, but it's a mother-in-law that will become such in the future. Is she believed right now? In order to appreciate this idea, we have a diagram on the side. There's a star indicating chamosa bo liachar mikan. So in this scene we have there's an av and an aim that produced what we have on the chart called Baal. That's the son of this av and aim, who's married to a woman. In the event that son, who's married to the Isha who's circled, dies without children, so then she will be married by the surviving brother, the Ach, that you can see in the diagram, we call the Yavam. Now, these 2 men, the Baal and the Ach, they are brothers from a common father, but not from a common mother. So the Isha has a current mother-in-law, but there's another woman in this scene that's called her future mother-in-law. It's not her mother-in-law right now, but it's a future mother-in-law. Who is it? It's the mother of her husband's brother. We want to know, is that potential mother-in-law believed to testify about the death of the Isha's husband? The question, of course, is coming on the heels of the Mishnah that taught that a basic mother-in-law, a current mother-in-law, is not believed. So now the Gemara. Boy v'marova. In Eretz Yisrael, they asked. I should read first. Omar of Acha bar Avya. Boy v'marova. They asked in Eretz Yisrael, Chamoisa bo liachar mikan mahu. And we ask, Mi maska adaita demis baal v'nofla kamiyovan v'sanyala. Does the mother of the husband's brother think about, does it occur to her that the Baal that we have on the chart, that he would die, and as a result of his death, the Isha that we had circled, the Isha will become her daughter-in-law. She'll become the wife of the Yavam and the Sanya-law, and as a result of that, she is now a mother-in-law relating to her daughter-in-law, and that has this element of hate to it, and hence we can't rely on her word concerning the husband's death. She would lie to see to it that the woman, the Isha, marries out, and then her husband would come back, and she'd become puzzled, removed from the picture, from this family. So do we say that when the potential mother-in-law testifies that it occurs to her that as a result of the husband's death, she, the Isha, will end up marrying her son? Or not? Or we don't say that all this occurs to her. Let's take a look at Rashi. 3 lines from the bottom. Mimaska hach aim yavam. Does it occur to the mother of the yavam adaita? Does it occur to her mind? Dilmo mayas bal v'noflo kami yavam bro v'kochol legirsana. That my son's brother might die, leaving no children, and that woman will end up marrying my son and then consuming all of my hard work, all of the profits, all of the property and profits that I give to my son. And because all of this might occur to her, she already plans to mess her up from right now, so that by messing her up, by testifying that the Isha's husband is dead and when he's really not, so then she'll become puzzled. If she ends up marrying someone else, she'll become puzzled to her son's brother, to her current husband, and hence she will not even enter the Yibum process in the eventuality of her husband's dying without any children. Does that occur to her? Oy lo. Or maybe a person doesn't think in those terms. Let us turn back to the Gemara. Toshma. The Gemara continues at the top of Omid Beis. Notice the response is a long response. Omra, a woman who would say, Meis ba'ali v'achakach meis chami. A woman says, my husband died, and after my husband died, my father-in-law died. Tino say, v'tito ksuba. So the woman who said regarding her own husband that he died so she can remarry, and she can collect her ksuba payment. V'chamoisa asura. The mother-in-law, though, is Ozer to marry. My taimo chamosa asura. Why is it that her mother-in-law cannot marry? Lav mishum diamrinon. Is it not because we say lo bailo meis v'lo chomia meis? In fact, the woman who was testifying regarding her own husband, he really didn't die, and her father-in-law did not die. That she tells us all of this information, that her husband died and that her father-in-law died. Her whole goal is to mess up her mother-in-law. Savra lebosser shaita lo tesi titz ta'aron. That by my testimony, so the mother-in-law would go and marry some other man, and then her husband, the father-in-law, would come back, and she, the mother-in-law, would be messed up and leave the family and not bother me anymore. So what we see here is a concept of people calculating that which will take place later. How does all of this tie into the case of Chamosa Boli Achar Mikan? So we take a look at Rashi. Omro Meis Bali V'achakach Meis Chomi Rabusa Shminan. The Mishnah here is telling us a Chiddush. The Afagav the Omro Bereisha Meis Bali. Even though she says at the outset, my husband died. By saying that, so the infamous mother-in-law is no longer a mother-in-law. V'nimsa she'enzu chamoisa. V'arehi lo kinochris. With the information, the first piece of information, meis bali, so the mother-in-law is no longer a mother-in-law, she's like a stranger at that moment. Afilu hachi lo mehemno ad omro meis chomi. Even though at that moment, the mother-in-law is really a stranger, the Mishnah tells us she's not believed regarding the information of Meis Chami, that my father-in-law died. The Chamoisa Asura. And as a result of not believing the daughter-in-law regarding the death of Chami, so the Chamosa is also, she cannot marry out. My taima, Halav Chamosahi. Why is it that the daughter-in-law is not believed? After all, at the time she says Meis Chami, the mother-in-law is no longer a mother-in-law. Elo mishum de amri. Rather, it's because we say as follows: Hach, this woman who spoke, lav bailomayas vadayan zu chamosa v'lo chomiomayas v'zu kalosa miskavna lekalkala. That in truth, none of these men died. Neither of these men died. And the woman speaking is still, in fact, a daughter-in-law. Ve'afagav dahashta hare beno shelzu v'menias hayam v'ein imoi ex-loi ledaber loi al kalosa dvorim roim. Even though right now the son of her mother-in-law, the speaker's husband, is abroad. He's not here. He's not near his mother for him to hear all kinds of bad stories concerning the daughter-in-law. Afilu hachi masko kala adaita lekalkulo me'achshav. Even though right now there's no, the kala, this daughter is not suffering. She's not suffering from the ill words spoken by her mother-in-law. But nevertheless, it's on her mind now to mess up that mother-in-law. Ki hechi de lebosser shaita kishiyoshuv bali ubalo tidche lecherpois v'lo tesi letardon. She makes a calculation now based on the future, so that when my husband does come back and her husband, my father-in-law, do come back, she, the mother-in-law, will in the meantime have married out and under unjustified circumstances, and then she will have to leave this family unit because of having had relations with another man. So you see a concept here of a person calculating now what will happen later. Similarly, with the case concerning the future mother-in-law, Deha nami achar mikenhu. As we explained earlier, it's also a situation of afterwards. So you have a woman's husband's brother's mother calculating that her son's brother's wife is going to become her daughter-in-law. So she's already interested in messing her up right now to prevent her from becoming her own daughter-in-law. So as a result of all of this, the Tashma attempt of the Gemara right now is to conclude that Chamoisa Boli Achar Mikan is not reliable. The Gemara rejects this analogy. Dilma shiny hasam derogish la tzara. It might very well be that the cases are different. That a mother-in-law Chamosa Boli Achar Mikan would be believed. The case of the story involving the daughter-in-law trying to mess up her mother-in-law based on the future return of her husband and her mother-in-law's husband. That's because, why is that daughter not believed? Because the shiny husband, the rogish lotzar, she's already felt the pain of that mother-in-law. That's different than the case of where there was no relationship up till that future point. But here there already was pain felt by this daughter-in-law, where the mother-in-law had told her son about how bad a wife he has, that already has engendered hate. The Mishnah. Eid Omer Mace V'Nises Ubo Eid V'Omar Lo Mace. A witness comes testifying about a woman's husband having died, and upon hearing that, the woman went and married an outsider, a new husband, and another witness comes and says the original husband did not die. Harezu Lo Teitse. The woman who remarried does not have to leave her new husband. Eid Omer Mace Ushnaim Omrim Lo Mace. A single witness says that the husband died, and two say he is still alive. So you have 2 against 1. Afal pi shenises teitse. Even though the woman originally had she remarried based on the testimony of the singular witness, upon the information revealed by these 2 witnesses, she must leave her new husband because her original husband is still alive. Shnaim omer meis v'eid omer lo meis. 2 testify the man is dead, that the husband is dead, and 1 comes along and says he didn't die. Afal pi shelo nises, Gino say, even if the woman had not remarried, even though she didn't remarry after the first 2 witnesses saying that her husband was dead, and in the meantime, before her remarrying, a singular witness comes and says the husband is still alive, the information conveyed by this singular witness is of no importance, of 0 significance. Therefore, Tina say, she can remarry, even though this remarriage is after a singular witness says that your first husband is still alive. We now turn our attention back to the beginning of the Mishnah, and on the side we should say we have a topic heading Eid Echod Shomar Meis Nemon Kishnayim Bizman She'echod Meid Negdo Delo Meis. We're going to develop a principle that a singular witness will say 1 against 1, one saying Meis, one saying no, Lo Meis. A singular witness who says that a man died, he has the believability of 2 witnesses when he's going up against another singular witness claiming that he's still alive. The Gemara. Taimo Denises. According to our Mishnah, we said that the woman does not have to leave her second husband because she acted immediately. She acted as soon as the first witness came with the information of her husband's death. She married a second man. If she had not married a second man until the second individual witness came saying that the husband is still alive, are you going to tell me then, Lo Tina say, that she cannot now marry a second husband? V'amar Ula. But we have Ula's principle, Kol Mokum Shemino Torah Eid Echad, wherever the Torah grants believability to a singular witness, as is the case over here, Harei Kan Shnayim. He has the status of 2 witnesses. V'ein dvorav shel echad b'mokum shnayim. There's no room to accept the testimony of 1 witness in the presence of 2. So that in our case, the 1 witness that came in saying he's dead, he has the strength of 2. That's it. The fact that a singular witness comes in later saying he's still alive would have no significance. So why was it so important in our Mishnah in allowing the woman to stay married to the second husband for her having to have quickly acted swiftly and marry that second husband before the second individual witness showed up. The Gemara responds, Hochi ka'omar, Eid echad omer meis, v'tiru ali nosei. We dashed underline the key phrase. It's not that she actually married a second husband, a remarriage, but rather when the one witness came in saying that the husband dead, the court gave her a heter. You have license to remarry. And a second individual witness comes saying that the husband has not died. Lo teitze mehatera harishon. The woman does not lose her original license to remarry. So as we indicated before, and here we're supporting Ula's principle, that the testimony of one witness saying specifically, mace by law, that her husband died, that has the strength of two witnesses when all that's contradicting that individual witness is another individual witness, and hence that second individual witness has no strength in such a case. Eid omer mace, and we saw ushnaim omrim lo mace. One witness says he died, and two witnesses say he did not die. Afapi shenises teitzei. Even if she happened to remarry after the single witness said that her husband was dead, she has to leave that second husband. Why? Because two witnesses are saying that the original husband is still alive. So what do we have in our Mishnah? One against two, and the Mishnah is telling us you believe the two. The Gemara says, Pshita, the ein dvarav shel echad b'malkom shnayim. The Mishnah is retelling us a halacha that seems to be fairly obvious, that we don't listen to one in the face of two. The Gemara answers, please take note of the fact that we have a long answer ahead. Lo tzricha b'psulei edus uchad Rebbe Nechemya. The Mishnah, in telling us this din, is speaking within the realm of people that ordinarily would not be accepted to testify. The Sanya, Rabbi Nechemya Omer, Kol Mokom Shemina Torah Eid Echad. In any area of law that the Torah grants believability to a singular witness, as is the case here with what we call Edus Isha, testimony concerning the death of a lady's husband. This is an example of a place where the Torah believes one. Haloich acha roiv deos. In topics like this, you follow the majority of those testifying. V'yosu shtei noshim be'ish echad kishnei anoshim be'ish echad. We grant power to two women against one man, as we would believe two men against one man. So this is the case that the Mishnah is talking about. It's not talking about a standard case of regular type witnesses, because in such a case, if you're dealing with those cases that demand regular testimony, so of course two push off one. But here, as we said, we're dealing with the two that are pushing off the one. Those two happen to be, let's say, women, the people that in other areas of law would not be accepted to serve as witnesses. The Iboyasema, another approach in explaining the Mishnah, and there's a minor difference in this new answer. And according to the answer we gave just now, the Mishnah is featuring the two women saying that he's still alive are going up against one man, even if it happens to be a man. In the Iboyasema, we're going to say differently. Kol hecha. In a case that an echad kosher means a witness that would be acceptable in all areas of testimony, all kinds of financial matters, monetary matters, tort law, all cases where an aid echad kosher shows up first, afilu me'anoshim ki aid echad damyan. If he is challenged even by 100 women, they would have the status of a single witness. And in other words, we would not view 2 women as being capable of defeating the testimony of a singular man, a man representing a case of an aid kosher. So, what's the case here? Ella, the case where we said 2 said he's still alive after 1 having said he was dead, that we believe the 2. What's the case? That's not, that, as we said, is not so obvious. Rather, it's a case where the initial witness that came in was a woman, not a man. That was the first lashon. The aleph lashon was a man had entered, and he will be knocked off by 2 women. According to the beis lashon, it would have to be an individual woman that came in that could be knocked off by 2 subsequent women testifying to the contrary. Elo kagon da soy isha meikara the tirtza the Rebbe Nechemya, and tirtza means to re-explain Rebbe Nechemya as follows. We had seen Rebbe Nechemya in the Taneg source just before, and here we see him with we'll say a changed and upgraded version. Rebbe Nechemya Omer kol mokom shmina torah eid echad. In any case of law where the Torah gives believability to a singular witness, haloch achar rov deos. In topics like that, you follow the majority of witnesses, the majority opinion. V'yasu shtei noshim b'isha achas kishnei anoshim b'ish echad. And we would view 2 women going up against 1 woman as 2 men going up against 1 man, where obviously you will follow the 2 against the 1. Avol shtei noshim b'ish echad kepalga upalga domi. If it were 2 women going up against 1 man, where 1 man had said the man is dead, the husband is dead, and the 2 women saying he's still alive, then we would say that's like palgu palgu, literally 50-50. We take a look at Rashi. V'asu shtei noshim b'ish echad, shtei noshim shikhishu eid echad v'omru lo meis. 2 women that say that he's still alive. Kishnei anoshim b'ish echad shorishon botel. 2 against 1, so the 1 would be void. Vafilu nises teitza, even if she happens to have married after the first witness testified, she'd have to leave her second marriage. Now, that was part of our explanation of Rabbi Nechemya, and in the second version of Rabbi Nechemya we said that we'll listen to the 2 over the 1, provided that the 1 in the second lashon of Rabbi Nechemya, where the initial individual witness was a woman, was someone who would be posuli edus. However, if it's 2 women saying he's still alive going up against 1 man who initially said he is dead, Rashi, we look at Rashi, the first line under the Gemara text, kepalga upalga B'yeid echad oimer meis v'hitirua linose uvo acher v'omar lo meis diomar v'masisin lo teitze metera rishon. When the Gemara uses the term like palga means like 50-50, it's saying, as we just saw in Rashi, it's like a case of 1 man saying he's dead and 1 man saying he's not dead. And we said that when the single witness saying that he is dead arrived, she received a heter to remarry, so that whatever equivalent testimony follows to the contrary, we will not listen to it, whether it be 1 man saying the husband is still alive, or 100 women saying that the husband is still alive. Shnayim oimrim meis v'chulei. In our Mishnah, we have seen a case where 2 said he's dead, and 1 says he's not dead. So even though she didn't marry, she is allowed to remarry. My komash molon. What is the point of this section of the Mishnah? Bepsule edus of Reb Nechemya, the Ozer Boser Rodeos. Are you suggesting that this too is talking about a case of psule edus, people that are not acceptable in testifying in other areas, and that the rule is we follow the majority opinion? Well, Hainuhach, we just learned that in the case just before, that this is what we just cited was case 3, but that's how we explain case 2 in the Mishnah. So what is case 3 adding? Mahu detema. I might have thought, ki azlinon bosa roiv deos l'chumra. Where is it that we would follow the majority opinion, the majority testimony? That's in a case where the result is one of stringency. Like in case number 2, we had the two that were saying, the two posel witnesses that were saying, he's still alive. And the result of that was that even if she had remarried after the first witness testified that he was dead, she's got to leave that new husband. That's a stringency, forcing her to leave the second husband. But as we see in case number 3, where 2 had testified that he's dead and 1 says he is not dead, the Mishnah said even if she didn't remarry after the 2 had said that he is dead, she can still remarry, even if it's after her having heard the individual testimony of his still being alive. That is an example of a leniency, of allowing the woman to remarry. So I might have thought that the idea of following Rov Deos doesn't apply where the result is leniency. Once again, when you're in the realm of basing your conclusion on Rov Deos, which is characteristic of these kind of areas of law where the Torah is ma'amin li'ed echad. Komash malon, so the Mishnah reveals to us that we always follow the Rov Deos, even if the result is leniency. Before we continue, we glance at the side under our no sour topic heading. Shtei tsoros, 2 co-wives. Shekol echad mi'ida shabal lo chai. You have 2 co-wives. Each one is saying that their husband is no longer alive. Ma hashpoas ha'edus al chaverta. What effect does this testimony have on her fellow or co-wife? The Mishnah. Achas omeres meis, v'achas omeres lo meis. One says that the husband is dead. The other one says he's not dead. Zu she'omeres meis, tinosei v'titok subasa. The one that is saying he is dead, so as we've seen in the past, a woman is believed to say, my husband is dead. So she can remarry, and she collects the ksuba that was guaranteed to her by her husband. V'zu shomeres lo meis, the one who is saying he's still alive. Lo tinosei. Well, she can't marry a second husband. V'lo titol ksubasa, and she doesn't collect the ksuba. Achas omeres meis, v'achas omeres neherag. One of the co-wives says he died a natural death. The other one says he's dead, but through murder. Rabbi Meir Omer, Hoyol umachisha zuazu, hareelu lo yinasu. Since they are contradicting one another, you can see the element of contradiction. So neither one can remarry. Rabbi Huda of Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, Hoyol v'zu v'zu moidois she'ein kayam yinasu. Rabbi Huda and Shimon say, between the 2 of them, there is agreement that the husband is no longer alive. So, each one can, yes, remarry. Eid Omer Meis, v'eid Omer Lo Meis. A witness says that the lady's husband died. Another witness says he did not die. We want to add here that the second testifier came before she received a heter to remarry. We continue. Isha. We continue at the top of Kuf Yud Ches Amud Aleph. Isha oimeres meis, the Isha oimeres lo meis. A woman, and we're not dealing here with co-wives. In general, one woman says that the lady's husband died, and another woman says he did not die. Hare zu lo tinose. And as we emphasized before, and Rashi makes the point here, since the second individual witness, the contradictory witness, arrives with the information that the man is still alive, he arrives with that information before the woman in question received a heter to remarry. So the second the second witness is let's say accepted with the testimony. Now we have contradictory testimony, and we cannot allow the woman in question to remarry. Let's take a look at Rashi inside at the top line. Isha omro meis, visha omro lo meis, harezu lo tinose, hail ubos shniya. The second woman came in, koidem shiatirua alpi rishona, before the woman received a heter to remarry based on the first testimony. Vafilu shniya zu sorosa o sarta. Even if the second woman happens to be a co-wife, saying that he is still alive, that is enough to prevent the woman to remarry. We now continue with the Gemara. Gemara opens with a question. Taima, the Mishnah said lo tinaseh, that the woman is not allowed to remarry. Di omra loy meis. Ha ishtika. However, if she had remained silent, tinaseh, are we saying she can marry? When we look back at the beginning of the Mishnah, we saw one of two co-wives was saying that the husband is dead, and the other was saying, no, our husband is still alive. And the Mishnah told us that the co-wife who had said he's still alive cannot remarry. That leaves room to infer, had she remained silent, having heard the testimony of her co-wife saying, our husband is dead, the other one just kept quiet, we would infer that the one who kept quiet is allowed to remarry. But now, she's going to be remarrying based on what? Based on her first co-wife saying, our husband is dead. So the Gemara's question is in the tone of wonderment. Tinaseh, ha ein sora me'ido lechaverta. But we have a rule that a co-wife cannot serve as testimony for another co-wife. This, of course, we saw back in the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph at the beginning of today's shiur. The third woman in the list was Tzarasa. A co-wife is not believed when saying that the husband is dead. So the Gemara answers, lo. The inference we just drew is not true, but rather, even if the co-wife would remain silent, she cannot remarry based on the testimony of the first woman, her co-wife. Rather, meis, it's the richolei. The testimony of his having died is what our Mishnah needs to teach us. Before we go further, we look at Rashi on the fourth line from the top. Lo, Meis itzterichale diafagav diishoska. Even though had she remained silent and not said he's still alive, but simply remained silent, pshitalon the lo tinose beis chavert. It's obvious that that second co-wife would not be able to marry based on the testimony of the first woman, the co-wife. Nevertheless, itzterich lashminin. The Mishnah has to teach us hecha the makchisha lo nami lo tinose. Even where the co-wife does contradict, we have to say she cannot remarry. The mahu de tema kevon de asya uma'aro. You might have thought that since she's coming to contradict and to she's coming to contradict and to weaken the testimony of the first co-wife, it's a revelation that her only purpose is to create pain and suffering for the first co-wife. U'agna, to make her into an aguna, a woman who cannot remarry. Shalotino say, by her, the second co-wife saying, he's still alive. She's showing us that she's not a truthful person. She wants simply to prevent the co-wife of remarrying. But tomus nafshem plishtim koavda, and she's willing to suffer herself just to see the first co-wife also suffer. That's the principle learned from this pasuk of tomus nafshim plishtim that Rashi just alluded to. Hilkach afilu hi tishtari. Because of this psychological interpretation, you know what? We should be matir even her to remarry. Even the woman that's saying, our husband is still alive. Chomash Malon. So our Mishnah is telling us, don't apply this psychological analysis. So now let's read that in the Gemara. Salka daita chamina ha mayas. I would have thought, without the Mishnah telling us that the second woman cannot remarry, I would have thought that in truth the man is really dead. And technically both women are now widows. Both co-wives are widows. And the fact that the second woman said, no, he's still alive. Her sole intention is to mess up the co-wife, and in this case, the mess up would be in the form of keeping her an aguna, keeping her from remarrying by this testimony that he's still alive. By saying he's still alive, she too is going to suffer. She is not going to be able to remarry. That can still be explained in her saying lo meis, when in fact he is dead. V'tomus nafshem plishtim komra. She's saying this, that he's still alive, just to see the first co-wife suffer. It's worth it for her to suffer herself, as long as the first co-wife will suffer as well. Komash malon. Our Mishnah is telling us that this whole analysis is not to be applied, but rather, when she's saying he is still alive, she is saying, from her standpoint, that is what she really believes, that he is still alive. And she's not motivated from a standpoint of coming to lie just to mess up the first woman, but in truth, from her vantage point, the husband is still alive. Therefore, since she's not coming with this, we'll say, this spiteful attitude, but rather telling the truth from her own vantage point, she cannot remarry. Of course, the first woman that's saying that he is dead, she is allowed to remarry based on the concept that a woman is believed to testify about her husband's death. But of course, as we have already explained, that information that the husband is dead has no relevance regarding the co-wife. Achas oimeres meis, and as we saw in the Mishnah, the other one said he was murdered. The first one said he died a natural death, and the second woman said he was murdered. Rabbi Meir pointed out that there's an element of contradiction here, and therefore neither one can remarry. In our Mishnah, we already saw an element of contradiction at the opening of the Mishnah. One of the co-wives said, our husband is dead, and the other co-wife said he's not dead. And in that section of the Mishnah, there was contradiction, and yet Rabbi Meir didn't say they cannot remarry, but rather the woman that said he is dead was able to remarry. So the Gemara asks, V'liflog Rabbi Meir Bereisha. Why doesn't Rabbi Meir speak up in the beginning of the Mishnah, where, as we said, there was also contradiction, and say that they cannot remarry? Omar Rebbe Ozer, b'machloikes shnuya. The din of the Reisha, in fact, is a controversial law for Rabbi Yehuda of Rabbi Shimon, and it reflects the opinion only of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, and not the opinion of Rabbi Meir. For Rabbi Yochanan Omar afilu tema Rabbi Meir. The Reisha could be in accordance with Rabbi Meir. Beho afilu Rabbi Meir moide. In the Reisha, Rabbi Meir will agree that she can remarry the woman who said mace. Dechol loy mace beidus isha lav hakosha hi. Where you have a woman saying he died, and the opposing woman saying he did not die. That lashon of testimony, that form of testimony, namely lo mace, in this topic known as edus isha, the testimony concerning husbands being alive or not, does not constitute a hakosha. It doesn't constitute contradictory testimony. Why is that? And the answer to that is, which of course, and Rabbi Meir acknowledges this, that the testimony of mace has the strength of 2, when, of course, it's going up against a contradiction of lo mace. So the testimony of mace, having the power of 2, will win, or will be viewed as not contradicted by testimony of lo mace. So that the Reisha represents a unique case. The Seifa, where one said he died naturally and the other one said he died as a result of being murdered, that is what we'll call standard contradiction in testimony, and they are both they are rejected, as Rabbi Meir says, and they cannot remarry. Tanan, Eid Omer Mace, V'Eid Omer Lo Mace. The quote here, of course, is from the end of our Mishnah. One witness said he's dead. The other one saying he's not dead. Isha Omeres Mace, V'Isha Omeres Lo Mace, Hare Zu Lo Tinose. The Mishnah said at the end that the woman cannot remarry. Bishlamah Rebbe Ozer. This makes sense according to Rebbe Ozer's approach. Stamo ka Rebbe Meir. Here you have an unnamed section of the Mishnah in accordance with Rebbe Meir. Rebbe Ozer, the Amora, had pointed out that the din of the Reisha, where there was contradiction and we didn't throw them out, that was only according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. But according to Rabbi Meir, in fact, we would throw it out. There would be no remarriage. Here in the end of the Mishnah, this nameless part of the Mishnah, you have it in fact declaring no remarriage, coming on the heels of contradictory testimony. So this is a Stam Mishnah in accordance with Rabbi Meir. Elo l'Rabbi Yochanan kashya. But according to Rabbi Yochanan maintained, he said that even Rabbi Meir will concede that when you've got testimony of mace versus low mace, the testimony of mace cannot be knocked out by the testimony of low mace. The end of this Mishnah is going to be according to whom? It's not going to be according to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, and it's certainly not, and it's not going to be even according to Rabbi Meir. So you're leaving the end of the Mishnah unaltered. Kashya, this presents a difficulty to Rabbi Yochanan's analysis.